Alright, it's getting windy again. I'm reading an article here, and from the New York Times. Now, let me start off. Just opened it, of course, but seems pretty important. Police are rioting. There was some National Guardsmen who were sent to a protest. They all set their shields down and stood there. They didn't use their shields. They didn't even try. How many American soldiers are willing to shoot at Americans? It says the police are rioting. We need to talk about it. It is an attack on civil society and democratic accountability. If we're going to speak of rioting protesters, then we need to speak of rioting police as well. No, they aren't destroying property. Whoa, bullshit. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I gotta call bullshit on that. Smacking people's windows out, throwing the cameras that they're recording these officers with, it is legal to do so. So they got it wrong already. Now, I got to read a tiny part of this because when it comes up on Facebook, it's got like half a sentence followed by 3 dots. So the part that I got to is where they aren't destroying property. That's new to me. They are destroying property. In addition to destroying human bodies. I don't mean like burning corpses or anything like that. I mean doing physical harm to peaceful protesters, peaceful gatherers. The police are doing this indiscriminately and violently, and they're doing it often. This is not a new thing. This isn't something that just started happening because of George Floyd. And a lot of the white people that I keep hearing, the ignorance coming out of many of these white people in this community. You know, I don't get why they're destroying their own neighborhood over one black person. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. We're not talking about one black person. We are talking about a national history of murdering unarmed black people. A lot of people are focused on the men part, which, for once, right? It's about fucking time, but only if you're black and a male. Well, damn, ain't that a catch-22? So now we still got to deal with sexism and racism at the same time. All right. Now, I speak out about things that I think are wrong on both sides of the line, but when it all comes down to it, whose side of the line am I on? The ones who are peaceful. If you're breaking things, you're being a lot more peaceful than you should be, according to most people's opinion. Most of the white folks in this area are gun owners, and they have no problems speaking openly and freely about what they would do if this was happening in their town. Well, you know, if somebody did that to my kids, I'd just fucking shoot them. No, you fucking wouldn't. You don't own that gun to defend the First Amendment, which is the only reason that you have the right to own that fucking gun. The Second Amendment is meant to protect the First Amendment, but you own a firearm so that you can brag about having a firearm, so that you can flash your firearm, so that you can intimidate people with your firearm. But when it all comes down to it, just like those guys who said they'll cut all the nuts off all these child molesters or cut their heads off, you're just words. When I said that I was going to expose these predators, I did. These police tactics that they're using against black people in houses, keep in mind that this happens to the homeless all the time. There is not one moment of any day in the United States when there is not a homeless person being victimized because they're broke, because they don't have a house. This all comes down to poverty. It is just assumed that a black man walking down the street in a white neighborhood must be up to no good. And if they're wrong, it's no big thing because he doesn't have the money for a civil lawyer. Or at least that's the assumption. Very similar to a backpack, but a backpack gives you a guarantee. That backpack gives you a 99% guarantee that you're going to get away with it. You go messing with a black person for being black, you're running at around 50% chance. Because the police can go after the homeless openly and in public and nobody gives a fuck. You see the police doing that to a black person, you start pulling out your camera. There's a lot of situations where the police would come up to the homeless and start instigating situations by bullying and by breaking the law and by telling us that the law says something that it actually doesn't. And then they make fun of our dead friend who froze to death. And then they turn on their cameras when we're pissed off because we are backed into a corner literally by the police, being threatened, harassed, and intimidated by the police. And then why is it that their cameras always magically start there? Why don't their cameras start with them walking up to the people that supposedly committed a crime? Because they want to start shit with people who are broke. Just like any other predator, they look for someone that they can get away with taking it out on. And just like any other predator, they feel more comfortable doing it if they can get more people taking part in it. These police officers have broken many things. That's not even starting to count the human cost. The cost in human lives. You want a bitch that stuff is getting burnt down over one black man getting killed, and that is not the fucking case here. You should be thankful. Every police officer in America should be thankful that they aren't being actively hunted like they do black people and homeless people. If we treated the police the way that the police treat us, the police would all be dead. I don't want the police all dead. That's not going to prove the point. Killing people who kill people does not show that killing is wrong. Incarcerating those officers for the rest of their lives is a good start. That's incentive for officers to do the right thing. And then we force them to wear body cameras for our safety. In their position of power, they can harm too many people just by turning off their body cameras or by not having them. There was a grant given to Boulder County. That grant was specifically given to Boulder County so that Boulder County could buy their officers body cameras. That's not what they spent it on. That right there shows the city council is committing felonies. They did not spend that grant money on specifically what it was supposed to be spent on, body cameras. I realize I didn't read this whole thing, and I'm probably not going to. However, we'll read a couple more sentences into it just because. But it is clear from news coverage, as well as countless videos taken by protesters and bystanders, that many officers are using often indiscriminate violence against people, against anyone, including the peaceful majority of demonstrators who happens to be in the streets. Rioting police have driven vehicles into crowds, reproducing the assault that killed Heather Heyer in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017. They have surrounded a car, smashed the windows, tased the occupants, and dragged them out onto the ground in quite a few cities, actually. One of those cities, the kids who were dragged out of their vehicle, they were dragged out for videotaping a black man being assaulted by police. And the two black people in the vehicle who were recording it were dragged out of the vehicle, had their vehicle smashed. What a bunch of bullshit. Clad in paramilitary gear, they have attacked elderly bystanders, pepper sprayed cooperative protesters, and shot non-lethal rounds directly at reporters, causing serious injuries. See, now people care when it's a reporter. What about when it's a black person? Oh, they shot that reporter with a rubber bullet. It could have killed them. They did kill George fucking Floyd. George Floyd is not the first in this. And we keep hearing about, oh, well, why is it that every time a black man gets killed, they riot? No. If there was a riot every time a black man was killed in the United States, there'd be a riot, well, nonstop. People die every day. People are shot every day. There are black people and white people in America who are murdered every single day with gun violence, with stabbings, with poison, with lots of different things. There isn't a riot every time that a black person dies. That's just ignorance and bullshit, and you're spouting out your ass and you fucking know it. Homeless people are people too, by the way, and I know a lot of you don't agree with that. You don't believe it. Let's see. In Austin, Texas, a 20-year-old man is in critical condition after being shot in the head with a less lethal round. Across the country, rioting police are using tear gas in quantities that threaten the health and safety of demonstrators. Well, of course they are. In Longmont, Colorado, that's where I was assaulted by Officer Burke, who was in Broomfield at the time that Natalie disappeared. He was an officer there and he was let go. And Officer Amanda Jonas. Now, here's what they did to this family in Longmont. 40 cans of tear gas were shot into these people's house over a domestic violence dispute. And you know, the woman who was being abused was abused even more by the police than she was by the dude who beat her up, got the call to begin with. When you teach people how to bully others into submission, and then you want to call that law enforcement. No, the laws say that that's illegal, asshole. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this shit's not happening to minorities. It's not happening to black folks. And it's not happening to Native Americans. It's not happening to immigrants. And it's not happening to women. At the same time, I'm not going to go along with the narrative. Many of these people who want to just focus on their groups, who want to believe that no white person could ever possibly go through any of those terrible things. Oh no, it's even worse for white people going through that shit. When Zayd Atkinson had the same thing that happened to me, I was assaulted by police. All right. Zayd had a situation where he was treated like a homeless person, but was not assaulted by the police. And he talks about how he's afraid to leave his house. While he was treated like a victim, I was treated like a predator. And people were predatory towards me as a result of it. Am I the only white person who has to go through this? No, most of the homeless people, regardless of your skin color, have to go through this. If you're a female, you get a little bit more leeway. But then again, there's a lot of other people that you have to deal with on a worse scale. A lot of the women that I know on the streets, there was a dude who abuses them just because it reduces the amount of abuse overall. You having a boyfriend that beats you up once every 3 to 6 months is better in their mind than being beaten up and forcibly raped, or waking up in the middle of the night and you've got 2 or 3 dudes doing things that they should not be doing. And a lot of y'all are like, oh, well, that's fucking homeless folks. I told you they were all child molesters and rapists. No, we're talking about mostly college kids. They get drunk, they leave the bar, they didn't have the fun night that they wanted, they didn't get the girl that they wanted, and here's this woman passed out snoring in a bush. Now, you'd think that homeless people would learn not to snore, right? And that girl is probably not going to go to the police. And do you know why she's probably not going to go to the police? Because chances are pretty good, especially in Boulder County, that she has seen other women who are homeless get arrested by police for turning in their assault. They were assaulted. They go to Boulder Police Department to turn in that assault, that situation, and they end up getting arrested. Now, Teresa Massilia and Christine Kelly, well, neither of these women were homeless. Does that make what happened to them okay? Does that mean that I'm saying what happened to them is okay? Not even fucking close. I am still speaking out about that, about how wrong that was. What I'm trying to say to you guys, though, is that there are a lot of people on the streets who are dealing with this stuff, not just from the general public, not just from the other homeless people, not just from these college kids, not just from the police, and not just from the judicial system that doesn't give a fuck. You don't have the money for a civil lawyer. That's what they care about. That is the full extent of actually following the law that they're going to look at. Oh, he doesn't have any money? We don't have to follow the law. Elizabeth Athno, I probably pronounced that wrong. The same thing happens to victims of human trafficking as young as 12. You know, I was 6 when it started with me. I started speaking out at the age of 7. I mean, it's younger than 12. Right now, in many states, they actually get prosecuted for turning in those that traffic them, male and female. And you're absolutely right about that. I have been posting that shit up since before it was popular to do so. When it came to finding missing people, I've always been interested in helping to find them. It is ridiculous. Then you look at the jurisdictional stuff. If the police do stuff across jurisdictional borders and break the law across multiple jurisdictions, they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to slander you in multiple jurisdictions, to steal evidence, to destroy evidence, and to intimidate witnesses. And they're allowed to do this because I don't have the money for a civil lawyer. And because there is nobody speaking up like they are for George Floyd. But is it George Floyd they're speaking up for? No. No. They're speaking up for the fact that this keeps happening. Meanwhile, it happens 5 times more to the homeless than all other groups combined, and you still turn a blind eye to the homeless. Most women who are homeless because they were fleeing domestic abuse or because they turned in their domestic abuser and could no longer pay the bills. They made too much money to get any sort of government assistance. And when you're buying a 5-bedroom house because you got 3 kids, or a 4-bedroom house because you got 3 kids, and you want them all to have their own room, and you want to have your own room, you know, you think that between you and your husband, you're going to be able to pay off that house. And sure, it's 30 years that you got to pay on it, but you're only 2 years in, and he just beat the living hell out of you. One woman that had that happen to her in Boulder, she ended up homeless because she got beaten up. Now, for 2, maybe 3 weeks before she got evicted, She was talking about how great this officer was, how great this officer was, how great this officer was, how wonderful this officer was. This officer had rescued her from her abusive husband. And then she ended up homeless. And within a month, that very same officer whose praises she had been singing for months by this point. I mean, you got to figure that it takes 3 months to get everything taken care of in the state of Colorado to get you actually legally evicted. That's not saying the cops won't come and try, but 3 months is what you're looking at. And then you're homeless and you don't have any resources and you might have your kids. I know several women in Colorado who are living with their children in vehicles because for the most part, the only people who have the ability to take them in are men, and a lot of those men are predatory. Yeah, if you met him at a party and he was getting drunk and trying to get laid, chances are pretty good. It's probably not a good idea to move in with the guy. But then again, why does she move in? She's in a desperate situation. It's terrible to me that people have more of a hateful reaction towards a few people who are destroying things, but they don't give a holy goddamn about why. Human lives. These are human beings that the police are fucking killing and not caring about. And this isn't even getting started on the CPS situation. Just this year alone, just in the last 365 days, we have had over 20 CPS workers testify in court that they didn't know that lying to remove a child from the house was against the law. God bless America, right?